Former middleweight champion Chris Weidman has announced his retirement. This is long overdue for Chris Weidman. He's been through some nasty injuries in his career, had a lot of surgeries, and ultimately brings his legendary career to a close. The All-American Chris Weidman, congrats on an amazing career. Thank you for all of your service from the fans to you, Chris, and from all of the UFC to Chris as well. He made his debut back in 2011. We'll get into that in just a second. But Chris took to Twitter, responded here. He announced his retirement on the weigh-in show Friday morning before UFC 311 and had quite the emotional ride throughout a couple of video interviews, video packages, video messages sent from friends, family, and fighters alike. Let's take a read and a listen to what Chris Weidman had to say. It's been quite a ride. I'm super grateful to everyone who helped me along the way. Today I'm hanging up my UFC gloves, excited for the next chapter of my life, and will keep you guys in the loop on what I have going on in the future. Let's take a listen.
I had to get into this sport since 2009. The goal was to be a UFC fighter. Then immediately the goal was to become a UFC world champion. 14 years later, I'm here to tell you guys I'm hanging up the gloves in the UFC. I just want to thank the UFC for all the opportunities they give me. It's really become a family. From the Fertitta brothers to Dana White, to Hunter Campbell, Joe Silva, who's the matchmaker who brought me into the UFC originally, Mick Maynard, and all the staff from the UFC. They're all just like family. They're just amazing people. I want to thank my family for supporting me throughout all these years, through the ups and the downs. My coaches, Ray Longo, Matt Serra, Jeff Jimmo when I moved down to the Carolinas. All my training partners, shout out to John Vellante, who's my main training partner. But there's so many of them that helped me get to where I'm at. And my life has changed in just so many ways that I never would have expected if it wasn't for the UFC. So I'm just super grateful. I want to thank the fans for the support over the years, from the ups and to the downs, the same thing. I'm just super grateful for their support. It's been a ride from being an undefeated world champion and being able to be one of the greatest of all times in Anderson Silva, and then being able to defend my belt 3 times against some of the greatest legends of the sport. And then even from, the amount I've learned about myself and dealing with adversity and injuries. I've had 30 surgeries, and I put my body through a lot, and to be able to overcome a lot of that, it was always tough. Just proud that the UFC gave me an outlet to be able to compete against some of the best guys in the world. Proud of the resume and the type of guys I was able to fight. I respect them all so much. Yeah, and I really don't know what else to say. I'm just very grateful. It's a weird one. I've been calling myself a UFC fighter since 2011. And today, I think maybe for the first time, I can't say that. And it's weird. It's like kind of part of your identity. So I'm opening up a new chapter in my life, and I'm excited about the future. I'm leaving the door open for opportunities. We're moving on to see my life develop in different ways.
Wow. So Chris Weidman, another legend, going out the door. His last fight was against Eric Anders back at the end of 2024, UFC 310. And what a legendary career this guy has had. Let's take a look at where he started, where he's been, and maybe what's next. We'll see what happens. Does he move on? Does he keep competing in combat sports? Does he grapple? Does he go over to something else? We don't know yet. I don't want to see him do anything else. I'd like to see him just stick to commentary, whatever. It is what it is, and leave his fighting career behind. So, of course, he made his debut against Alessio Sakara in 2011, fought Tom Lawler, beat Damian Maia, Munoz. He defeated Anderson Silva in just his, 6th UFC fight. Defeated one of the best fighters of all time. Rematch with Anderson Silva did not go so well. That was the leg break. Beat Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort, and then he went on kind of a tough losing streak to some real legends in the sport. He just kind of met his match. The prime MMA guys, the MMA game had evolved at that point. Luke Rockhold, Yoel Romero, Gegard Mousasi, beat Kevin Gastelum, came back, Jacare Souza, lost Dominic Reyes when he moved up to 204, he beat Omari Akhmedov in his comeback there, and then of course the Uriah Hall leg break, which put him out of commission for 2 years. That was a devastating leg break. He lost to Brad Tavares in his comeback, beat Bruno Silva. That one was very controversial with the eye pokes and the fouling going on there. He just never was able to really be the same after that leg break, and we saw that again with Anderson Silva as well. It wasn't possible. When you have such a devastating injury like that, you just are not the same when you come back. But one guy that stood with him the entire way through was Ray Longo, and they had an emotional interaction after Chris announced his retirement, Ray Longo, of course, stuck through Chris Weidman through thick and through thin and was one of his guys. Let's take a listen.
Ray, before you go, on the way out, give us a punch a hole in his fucking chest, Weidman. Give me one more time. Let us have it one more time before you go, Ray.
I'll tell you, DC, I've been asked to say that, ever since I said it, and I would never do it. I would write it if somebody wanted, but I would never do it. But this is such a fucking moment for me that this guy, man, he was such an inspiration to so many fucking people, and he let them believe, and I think Aljo alluded to it, but really, if it makes you feel any better, I want you to punch a fucking hole through his chest.
That's my man. Thank you, Longo. Thank you. You're the best, buddy. What? Ray.
So they had an emotional interaction. You go watch the whole thing, I'm sure, on UFC's page. But Ray Longo has been there from the beginning with Chris Weidman. Aljamain Sterling has been there for a long time. Chris Weidman was always one of those guys in the gym who clearly wanted to pass the torch, who clearly, once he rose to the top, left the ladder down behind him so that others could climb up and he could help them to success. What a great leader is somebody who is generous and offers their services at all times. And Chris Weidman seems to have been that kind of guy. One of those guys who left everything on the table, gave everything for his guys, gave everything that he had for others so that they could succeed and learn from his mistakes and his losses. And that's what I think I take a lot from Chris Weidman and his career, ultimately, throughout the UFC and his run in the UFC. Did it run on a little too long? Yes, but this guy was an absolute legend of the sport. So Chris Weidman, thank you from me and everyone here.